Good evening. I'm here to speak about the May 3rd Sinking Fund Tax vote. First, holding an election in May results in immense costs, over $40,000 for this election. It's being generous. This is not the first time. They do this to evade most people who vote in November. The entire argument from the superintendent and supporters of this tax is that it does not increase taxes. While it is true that it doesn't increase the rate of taxation, it ignores a fundamental question, which is it necessary to begin with? After the passage of a $112.9 million bond in 2020, I'm going to make the case that this tax for the next decade is indeed unnecessary. For those of you scared of facts and figures, you might want to brace yourselves. The fact is, according to the Michigan Department of Treasury, less than 20% of school districts in the state of Michigan have a sinking fund tax. Of those that do, a majority have a very low bond debt. East China, on the other hand, not only has a sinking fund tax, we also have the highest bond debt in St. Clair County, paid for by taxpayers. To give a bit of history, in 2005, under immense financial pressure, the district put together a temporary plan to raise taxes for a sinking fund for the first time. Since then, the financial position of our district has become clearly stronger. According to the state transparency page, even with less students and staff, which translates to less expenditures, there has been more revenue due to more state funding per student. The general fund revenue increased by $4.5 million from 2015 to 2021. That was an 11% increase in revenue, which has the general fund sitting at $44.2 million, while in the same time frame, student enrollment decreased by 392 students. The general fund balance sits at $6.67 million, while the sinking fund balance is at $1.57 million. According to the Mackinac Center, the school district got $7.9 million for COVID relief money. In 2020, as you know, district voters approved a nearly $113 million bond, which supposedly is to update all the school buildings and infrastructure. This last winter, you had students wearing coats in classrooms with ongoing HVAC issues, as this superintendent was warm and cozy in her administrative castle. The superintendent was quoted many times that if passed, the bond would save 22% of the operations budget, which they claimed would be put back into the operations budget. At that time, the operations budget was $3.44 million. 22% of that is over $757,000. When you take that from the over $826,000 sinking fund tax, you end up with less than $70,000, which is 0.1% of your budget. Over half of that was spent on this election. Unfortunately, this is not the first lie told by the superintendent or this board. In 2014, voters approved a bus bond tax to pay for buses under a very public promise that if passed, the district would not privatize busing. In 2018, they plowed ahead with plans to privatize the bus department, and guess what? They found out it was more expensive. In 2019, the superintendent and many members of this board promised this community that they had no choice but to consolidate high schools. They had no choice but to consolidate, making Marine City and St. Clair the East China High School. They claimed that it would happen regardless of whether voters voted yes or no. I called them out on it, and that it was not physically possible. It was a scare tactic. In 2020, the superintendent promised at one of their misinformation meetings to keep Riverview East open after being pressed by a parent, and here we are today. They have more funding, and yet all they have is excuses. They do not have a darn, they don't give a darn about kids. It's all about what they can get their hands on your wallets. It's the truth. As you can see, there's no excuse to continue this unnecessary tax for another 10 years. They have more than enough funding set aside for a rainy day. It's not that they're unable to, it's that they're unwilling. Is there any board member that would like to refute anything that I've said? Dispute any of the facts that I've brought forth? Hearing none, I urge you to vote no on Tuesday, May 3rd. Thank you.